it's Susan with the Newton Carnegie Library, and I'm here today with more photography tips from Susan. Today we're going to be discussing composition. So composition in photography is when you arrange the elements of everything that's around the scene in order to make a pleasing photograph. So that can mean several different things. The elements of your photo will change based on what you're taking a photo of. So what you want to do, the first thing I always suggest when you're taking a photo is to stop, look around at the scene, at whatever it is you want to take a photo of, and you need to pick a subject because the subject will make you decide how you want to compose your photo and what you want to compose it around. So pick your subject, and then you're going to want to start looking at what the composition is that you want for your photo. The first thing we're going to be talking about is framing. So framing is where you look through your viewfinder of your DSLR or your iPhone, the back of your phone, and you just look and see what are the elements that are actually going to be in this photo. You want to look at the background, the subject, the foreground, all around it, and just make sure that everything that's in there is what you want in there, because your main goal is to take a great photo in the camera so you won't have to worry later about going back and cropping it and editing out. You want to try to do everything in camera as much as possible, because then it just cuts down on doing anything else later, especially if you're just taking photos of friends or family or anything like that. So you just want to look around, say, okay, this is what I want in the frame. Well, I don't like that, so I'll either zoom in or I'll step back or step forward and get that out of there. So you always want to look at the background and make sure it's not too messy or that there's too much going on. And then you want to think about your perspective. Where are you standing to take a photo? Are you kneeling to take a photo? Are you getting on your tippy toes to take a photo? Are you standing on a stool because you might want to get some more things in there that you can't get in if you're just staying there straight on? A lot of times if you're taking pictures of people, you don't necessarily want to get like low on the ground and shoot up, because that's not a real flattering look. But if you're getting pictures of people, you might want to stand on a stool and shoot down, because that is a really nice angle to shoot people with. It just helps everything look better. So think about things like that when you're looking to take your picture based on the angles. Another thing to keep in mind about composition are leading lines. Leading lines are some of my favorite things to play around with. So basically what a leading line is when you look at a photo, you want there to be something that subtly points to your subject. So leading lines can be stripes, fences, a road, just something that kind of starts out here and goes in and leads to your subject, and that can make a really pleasing composition. So I think that's why, a lot of people like to take photos in beautiful paths with trees that kind of go like this or like this, and it just looks really pretty, and it will lead you right to the subject, which is if it's a person, usually you want it to be towards their eyes, depending on what you're going for in the photo. But that's what I usually like to do. And then if it's an object, of course, you just want something to lead into there. And that just is a really pleasing thing. Your eye automatically goes to what those leading lines are leading to. And when you're thinking of composition, you can also think of layers. You can layer a photo to make add interest. So you can put a person here in the foreground, and then put someone maybe in the background that you maybe want a little blurry. So when you're looking at the photo, your eye will immediately go to the person standing in front and then to the background, and it just can give that really nice composition when you look at it like that. This is also a good perspective to use when you're taking photos of nature. The layering really works well with that as well. Like for instance, mountains. When you take photos of mountains, usually there's mountains in front and then they gradually go back, and that can create a really beautiful photo when there's multiple layers of mountains. So layering is a great technique to add interest to your photo and really bring out the composition. Patterns is another great way to bring attention to the photo. Sometimes you don't want to have too many busy patterns that take away from the whole photo, or they're like really messy, but sometimes patterns can create a really gorgeous photo. I usually think of that when you think of maybe taking photos of flowers, how flowers have ruffly edges or whatever kind of edges they have, that kind of can give a pattern to the photo, and that can be really pleasing to the eye. Another thing to decide on your composition is whether you want a horizontal or vertical photo. Horizontal photos are also called landscape photos, and vertical photos are called portrait photos. So you have to decide, horizontal or vertical, and wherever you want to take the camera, because sometimes if you look at your camera and you're doing a horizontal shot, you can look around and see what are the different things that are in the shot, and then you turn it vertically and suddenly you're like, oh, that's completely different and I'm getting different things in the shot. So that's part of deciding what you want your composition to be. Another part of composition is also the colors. You want to look around at all the colors in your photo and just make sure they're complementary, or if they're not complementary, that might be what you're going for. Maybe you want something a little more jarring that will catch the eye. So just also look at what the colors are in your scene that you're trying to photograph. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is the rule of thirds. Now this is the only actual photography rule we're going to be talking about today. And what I hear most people say about the rule of thirds is you should know what the rule of thirds is, but don't be afraid to break it. So what is the rule of thirds? The rule of thirds is a composition rule, and basically think about you're looking at a scene and you draw 2 horizontal lines and then 2 vertical lines, and that creates a grid pattern of 9 squares. So the rule of thirds says where those squares meet, the 2 lines touch, those are the focus points that you should use, because the eye is automatically drawn to those focus points, and that makes your most pleasing composition. If you're ever looking at a photo, like maybe taken by a professional photographer, and maybe you're like, that isn't in the center, that looks really off to me, the subject's a little off to the side, well, that's actually on purpose. That's usually using the rule of thirds, because if you look at where those lines meet, they're not directly in the center of the photo. They're sometimes just a little off to the side or up top or bottom, depending on if you're horizontal or vertical. So that's actually a properly composed photo. Now, sometimes that might not work and you do want to have a subject right in the middle of the photo, and that's fine too. Once again, if you learn the rule of thirds, you can break it if you want to, but based on science, that's apparently the most pleasing photo is when it's a little bit off to the side, and that's directly where your eyes go to your subject. So this is just a very few tips about composition. There is so much to composition, we could actually probably talk about it for hours, but these are just a few simple tips to get you started. I do have a book suggestion for you if you're interested in learning more about composition. This book, Composition from Snapshots to Great Shots by Lori Excel. This is a great book, and as you can see, you know, it's pretty thick. So it goes through all sorts of things for composition. It also goes into a little bit of stuff we've talked over before, like light, and it also goes into equipment that's good to use. So this is a really great book, and I really suggest you check it out if you're interested in going even more in depth with composition. And also there's exercises in this book that you can try these things and learn how to do them yourself. So if you have any questions about photography or composition, feel free to ask, and I will be glad to answer any questions, and I hope you enjoyed this Photography Tips with Susan. Thanks.